welcome all. Thank you for your testimony. I want to particularly welcome Dr. Altshuler, who is from a great New Jersey institution, professor and dean at Rutgers University. A lot of the discussion today has been focused on how uncompetitive the corporate tax rate is, and critics correctly arguing that our 35% statutory rate is the highest of all OECD countries. But I think we neglect to mention that our effective tax rate is actually right in the middle of that curve. According to the Congressional Research Service, the effective U.S. corporate rate in 2011 was 27.1%, slightly lower than the OECD average of 27.7%. Now, having said that, I do see myself supporting a tax reform package that seeks to reduce the corporate rate. But I also, as I think that that is important, I don't know that it's the holy grail of tax reform. I am concerned of the gap that the United States and the rest of the between the United States and the rest of the world in reducing the infrastructure and education gaps that we have. We were long the envy of the world in infrastructure, and we now just rank 12th globally, with billions of dollars of maintenance backlogs for roads and rails and ports. And American high school students ranked a dismal 26 out of 34 OECD countries in math. So, Professor Shea, let me start with you. It's estimated that for every point we reduce the corporate rate, we lose $100 billion in money to the Treasury. How do we look at this in the context of the desire to low corporate rates, but the necessity, I think, of infrastructure investment, both in infrastructure broadly defined and in educational pursuits?
Well, a key question that's at the heart of this hearing is how do you think about the taxation of cross-border income in that regard? And my view is it should not be left off the table if you're going to be trying to expand your base. Expanding the tax base by having tax at least up to some number, at least a minimum tax on income that's earned at very, very low foreign rates and very likely as a result of tax planning and incentives to achieve that. I think that would help contribute to the $100 billion a point that you're referring to. In other words, I don't think we should be excluding international income from the base in achieving a lower rate. At that point, there are quite a few corporate tax expenditures, and they're just going to be very clear decisions. My preference is, as I say in the testimony, a much broader base. Take away as many expenditures as is feasible, and either invest it in the rate or invest it in infrastructure or other things that would be valuable for the country.
Mm-hmm. Can we agree that a critical infrastructure and educational excellence in a globally challenged economy are incredible elements as well as to future prosperity?
You certainly have my agreement on that.
Okay. Let me ask Ms. Olson, we have been working on something that has broad bipartisan support in Congress, which is reforming the Foreign Investment and Real Estate Property Act, or FIRPTA, which is basically a punitive tax that acts as a roadblock to investments in the U.S. at a time that seems to me we should be doing the opposite and incentivizing investment. Does it make any sense to create obstacles like FIRPTA for foreign investments in the U.S., particularly considering our needs, for example, in infrastructure and a still looming commercial debt that is out there that has to be refinanced?
Can I give a one-word answer?
Sure.
No, it does not.
Okay.
No, clearly, FIRPTA does distort investment decisions about which sector of the economy to invest in, as well as whether to invest here in the U.S. or to invest in another country that doesn't have that kind of a tax.
I hope we can take your no and convert it into a powerful yes here to reform it. At the end of the day, we started some of that. Finally, let me ask about inversions. I find this particular activity absolutely reprehensible and un-American. Companies that benefit from our intellectual property laws, the protection of our military power, diplomatic expertise, the benefits afforded American businesses in operating abroad, the benefits of our universities and graduate schools, our highways, our infrastructure, claim First Amendment rights in elections, and then walk away from the table when the bill comes due. And so it's almost parasitic in my mind. So, Professor Shea, do you believe that a lower tax rate and a territorial tax system alone can end the problem of inversions in the U.S., or will we continue to have a need to address inversions directly?
I don't think that would end inversions alone, because a territorial system, as we've said, would almost certainly be accompanied by other provisions that would need to protect the U.S. tax base. There's still going to be pressure to try and move to some country that just taxes less. So there are going to need to be a whole series of provisions. But most importantly, we need to rethink our concept of corporate residence. And in my testimony, I suggest we should be taking account of shareholder composition when their companies are traded on U.S. exchanges. If they have substantial U.S. Shareholdings, we should, and it will take a fair amount of designing and thinking to make this a clear proposal, but we should move towards making those companies U.S. tax resident.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.